All right, all right. Good evening, good evening, good evening, Southside Everywhere family. I'm John Merriweather, your online minister for the Southside Everywhere campus. It is 7 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and you know what time it is on a Monday night. It is time for the Monday Message Recall. This is the opportunity uh, that we recap the sermon that was presented this past Sunday at the Southside Church of Christ, Durham, North Carolina, 800 Elmira Avenue. You can catch it online or on the premises, and we love to have you there in person, either in the chat or either online or in the church seats, so to speak. So you know the rules. Go ahead, get your mama them, get your daddy them, you get your cousin them, get your auntie them, get your friends them, get your mans them, all their names, so that they can come and be a part of this conversation. We were having a few technical difficulties. I think I got you now, Denise. I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay.
Yep, I hear you now. I heard you typing on the keyboard. So
Oh, okay.
we are live and direct in two different locations. So we Southside everywhere. So we live into the to that motto today. We everywhere and everywhere everywhere you want to be right about now. So I'm joined here, as I said, by my wife.
All right, y'all. It is the Monday Message Recall. Go ahead and drop inside of the chat the title, the sermon, the scripture, all the things inside of the chat right now. We're about to get the scripture read. John, go ahead and pull it up. Matthew 25, 14 through 30. Hopefully you already have it. I know we've been having some technical difficulties, so we was trying to get the tech together, and I'm like, John, just go. It's all right. I'll be your wing woman. I just work your chat like I did last week, but we got it worked out. My name is Denise Merriweather. I am the campus director of Southside Everywhere. So look, you can join us here each and every Monday night, 7 o'clock p.m., where we recap the sermon at the Southside Church of Christ, located in Durham, North Carolina, 800 Elmira Avenue, where worship takes place at 9:30 a.m. 9:30 a.m. Hey, sister-in-law, so happy to have you in here. Sister Desiree, how you doing? So happy to see you. I know some other people inside the chat. Okay, we managing weight. Yes, we are. Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. All right. So, John, if you have it, we're ready for the word. So we could go ahead and start this conversation and recap for those of you who may miss the sermon on yesterday and need to get in here and manage some weight. All right, John, are you ready? Oh, we can't hear you now. Yeah, take some water, but now I
There we
can't
go.
hear
I
you.
got the I
Okay.
got the
All right.
water. No, I had the mute button on, so you didn't get any backlash right there. But I got a whole bottle that I just opened because Brother Thomas then messed around and gave 16 verses.
He got it. You got it, babe. You can do it.
So we're gonna go ahead. This is a test that we're familiar with that he came with in a different perspective. And so begin with the 14th verse of Matthew chapter 25. I'm going to be reading from the King James version on this evening. It says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and did in the earth, and hid the Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. And his Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. And his Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gather where thou hast not strawn. And I was afraid, and I went and I hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that is thine. And the Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I have sown not, and I gather where I have strawed not. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it to him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that have not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right, there it is. It's the reading of the word. We got it. Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. So the topic of discussion was managing weight. Put it in the chat. I'm managing my weight. I'm managing my weight. I'm managing my weight. John. So, Brother Thomas brought some great storytelling on yesterday, and he started off with a great story of triumph and learning and teaching going through the year last year. So you want to start off with how he put us on that journey on yesterday to be able to get this powerful lesson.
Yeah, and he said that he had been running from this text because he didn't want it to come off in a way that we tune out because we're familiar with this text. So he was trying to look at a parallel in an approach where we can actually receive a deeper understanding, of the text. And so he's entered in with a personal testimony, and he says that some truth enters in with testimony over the theory. And what he was sharing with us is that how he and his wife have been struggling with their weight for many years. And then he says it's the type of struggle that you can measure in your knees, in your energy, in your back. He says you avoid eating at potlucks. He's like, you even avoid taking pictures at the family reunion because of the weight that you are bearing. And he says, but over the past year, he has lost more than 100 pounds. And congratulations to that. Salute to him. I'm happy for that. And he says that he has experienced in his body, in his soul, this change. And he says, weight is not something that you have, that weight is something that you manage. We all have weight, but it's how we manage it, how we carry it, how we handle it. What do we do with it? And he says, you think that loss is about subtraction and denial. He says, but it's not. He's like, it's about the managing. He's like, it's about stewardship. And he says, in other words, you have to be careful what you let access you. And you hear it time and time again when people say, if you want to lead a healthier lifestyle, you have to get rid of those things that call out to you. You have to get rid of the chips, and you got to get rid of the cookies, and you got to get rid of all the, the chocolate and all those things, right? Those snack foods that help you to gain and hold weight that you're not supposed to carry. And so he says, every appetite was an argument. Every plate was a theology. You are expressing what you believe in at that moment that you put the fork to the plate. When you hear the clank of clank, that is an amen. Come on, somebody. And he says that your body changes by practice, and managing your identity transforms your body as well. And so he says that you cannot, and this was a nugget, he said you cannot keep rehearsing an identity that you want God to break. We want God to change us. We want God to transform us. We want God to let us experience the breakthrough and let us to have success. But if we keep returning, ooh, and that's an idea right there. If we keep returning, if we let God clean us up and we return to the mud, he's like, oh, we let God purge it out of us, but we go back and we sop it back up, just like a pig going back to the mire, or a dog returning back to his vomit. Then we will never become lighter or more able. We will never lose and that which has control over us. And he says that we will continue to be limited. But he says, if you learn how to trust God, then you will lose what limits you, and you will gain more capacity than what you had before. He says you'll be lighter and able, less weight down, and more weight bearing. And so he shifted from there, and with that background, with that testimony, with that backdrop, moved into the text. And he says, the question is, he's like, not only what do you have, but what do you do with what you've been given? It reminds me of what brother Chester Mayfield often says. He's like, what do you have in your hand? What are you using that God has already equipped you with? And are you using it the right way? It is a self-examination that we have to do. And he says that's what we get from this text. And he says that's how we can apply it to our spiritual lives. God gives us weight to manage, and how we manage that weight will determine if we lose the weight that is holding us back and that is weighing us down, and receive the ability to increase the capacity to be able to carry weight for the kingdom. He says this doesn't happen accidentally, but this happens with intention.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to your mentality and where you are with what it is that you're dealing with each and every day. So many powerful things that was within this personal story that he was telling. The thing too about transformation, he said transformation is not just intentional, right? It's more to transformation than just intentionality. It's not enough to take us across the finish line to be able to lose what is hindering us and be able to gain the capacity. A lot of people think it is about loss and clearing of the plate, but in actuality, it's expanding the plate. Expansion is uncomfortable. Put that in the chat. Expansion is uncomfortable. If you were who you needed to be what you want to be now, you would be there. If you was who you needed to be in order to be where you wanted to be, you would already be there now. Right? So if you was the person, if you had the capacity, if you had the character, if you had the health, if you had the strength, if you had whatever it was that you needed in order to be who you wanted to be, you would have the thing that you want in your hand already. And that is just speaking about the capacity and the expansion. In order for you, you know, the terminologies or sayings that sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Put it in the chat. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Put this in the chat. God can do more with less, right? All of these are in the same thing. You don't need to get things off your plate. You just need a bigger plate. Like all of these are speaking to the intentionality of expansion. So you lose weight to have a greater capacity, a greater area, or a greater space to work with. And it's not about loss, it's about expansion. So put that in the chat. It's not about loss, it's about expansion. It's about the capacity of a thing. It's like a water jug. A water jug that is made for a gallon of water can only hold what? A gallon of water. So if you come with 2 gallons of water and try to pour it in a 1 water gallon container, is not going to be able to hold it because of the capacity. So that's what he's speaking to. Sometimes you got to lose the weight that's holding you back in order to be able to expand your capacity or gain capacity. I thought that was just so powerful. Just want to make sure we're on the same page about this losing and gaining, because there are things that you need to lose to manage the weight, but it's not always just about the weight or the number on the scale. It's also about the capacity. All right, John. So where did he take us after he gave us that great lesson on capacity and intentionality.
Yeah, so he asked us another question. He's like, why do we struggle with stewardship? He's like, why do we often hide the weight that God has given to us, the thing that God has commanded us to carry? He says, why don't we often take a holy risk? And he's like, we struggle with responsibility. And sometimes we run from the word, just like he was running from this test, because once we know it, we're responsible for it. See, we love to remain ignorant because ignorance gives us, quote unquote, an excuse. But you got to remember that over in Romans, God said, Paul said, in times past, God winked at the ignorance of man, but now commands all to repent. So guess what? Even if you don't know it, you're still responsible for it. It's just like when the teacher used to put the test paper in front of you and you got to that problem that you didn't know, that you didn't remember how to do. And you was like, man, I don't know how to do that. But guess what? You still lost those points, right? Because you were responsible for the knowledge that was in that chapter. And so we have to understand that we are responsible. So he says, if we're going to manage the weight that we've been given, and he said he wanted us to understand too that weight was something that was it wasn't necessarily money, it wasn't necessarily ability, but he wanted us to understand that what we were given, what the weight that they were given in this text was something that was of value, something that was entrusted, and something that was a precious metal that could be exchanged for money. And so it was in the raw, but it still had value. You had to cultivate it. And a lot of times we carrying around these abilities, they need to be developed, and we got to develop the talent. Yes, you may be able to hear the note, you may be able to hum a tune, but it's now time for you to go ahead and spend the time on how to train your voice to be able to hit that note at the right time, to be able to edify the saints and be able to put that into expression so that they can feel what you're singing, so they can identify with the spirit. Because a lot of times you can sing something with the wrong spirit and it ain't going to move nobody. But if you can go ahead and allow God to allow you to communicate in your spirit, then you can be able to touch the hearts of somebody. I just wanted to throw that in there while we was in there. But he says the first point is that we must receive it. We must remember that everything that we have, God entrusted us with it, and nothing that we have belongs to us. In other words, we are leasing, we are renting. And if you don't hold to the terms of the lease, guess what? You will lose that temporary possession of where you're inhabiting. And so don't never think that whatever God has weighed on you, that he can't get that weight off of you. God can put glory on you, or God can get glory off of you. He can put glory on you, or he can get glory from you. But either way, God's glory is going to be had. And so he wanted us to understand James chapter 1, verse 17, that every good and perfect gift comes from God. He's like, we are not self-made. And then it says God in Psalms, the 139th Psalms, knitted us together. That means that he put us together completely. He put us, our abilities, our lives, this brain that we have, the ability to breathe, our bodies, everything is controlled by God. It all comes from God. And God, even you can even say, somebody say, I make the most of my time. No, you don't, because God gave you the time that you are using. You are on borrowed time. Put it in the chat. You on borrowed time. Because when he comes back, he's going to say, give me my time. There was a powerful skit by this dude called Spoken Lessons. He says, when you mistreat God's time, don't be upset when he cuts your time short and tells you to give it back. We will all have to return our time that God has given us to us. He's like, so we have to examine, what am I doing with the time that he's given me today? What am I doing with my breath? What am I doing with the opportunities that he's allowed me to think of, to be creative? Everybody has been given at least one hope and one dream. What did you do with that hope and dream? Did you utilize it? Did you cultivate it? Did you invest in it? Or did you go and bury it in the ground because you were afraid? That's what often happens to our dreams and to our time. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Ben.
I think it was super powerful when he got to the end of this point, which was point one. You know, we have to accept it, receive it, and manage it. Was that they were not judged on their ability and what they got. That is not where the stem of the lesson was, right? This is where John was wrapping up. They were judged based on what they did with what God had put in their hands. So the question on the table, if God was to come back right now, is he going to be pleased with what he has placed in your hands? Right? There's a bigger lesson that we're going to get to as we continue to talk about and recap the sermon, which is something that I talk about often, is I'm not going to spoil it, right? We'll get to it. And if not, I'll make sure that we mention it before we go. But the first thing is, if God came back today, just put it in the chat. Will he be happy with what you have done, with what you have been given? Look at the story. If he gave you 5, did you make 5 or did you lose 5? If he gave you 2, did you make 2? Did you lose 2? If he gave you 1, did you make 1? Did you lose 1 or did you bury 1? Right? I think that's true. Oh, I don't see nothing in the chat. So I just want you to, the responsibility is still the responsibility. I'm your accountability partner right now. And the question on the table is, because I don't see the chat moving yet, if God was to come back today, will he be pleased with what you have done, with what you have in your hand? And it's okay to tell on yourself it's a safe space, right? This is what we are here for the edification of each other, for the strengthening of each other, for the challenging. The word is supposed to challenge us, right? To do more, to be more, to rise to the occasion, to strengthen us within the body of Christ. And the lesson is, as for me, I know I could do better. Me too, sis. Like, I know if he was to come right now, there will still be some questions on some things that he has already told me to move on. And this whole thing about weight as well, right? The battle of the weight, the fluctuation, what has been challenging me all month. I'm in this program of a breakthrough beyond fitness, right? It's beyond fitness. How can you allow the choices that you're making at the table affect your vitality, your overall health, the impact that you're going to be able to make in the world? Because it's all connected. It's just like he was saying in his opening story. Am I going to continue to allow this mismanagement of weight affect my energy and what it is that I can do for the kingdom? Because it's all connected. When you can't sleep well, when you can't breathe when you're sleeping because you have sleep apnea, or you have to be on the CPAP machine, or your weight is disturbing the way that you breathe, the way that you move, your flexibility, you can't continue to ignore that and think it doesn't affect the work that you have to do for the kingdom. It does. It's stewardship of your temple, right? This is your temple. You have one, and you have to be mindful of what you're doing with it. So even if we just looked at how we are taking care of our temple, forget everything else. Forget the gifts, talents, the abilities, the opportunities that he's given us that some of us may not have taken advantage of. Forget the money that we have mishandled. Forget all of that. Let's just talk about the thing that you manage each and every day, like your body and the time that you go to sleep and how much oxygen you're giving and how much water you're drinking, like all those things that's needed in order to make your body function. How are you even doing with that? Because you only have one temple, and the management of your temple will affect the impact that you're able to make in this world. And if we don't get it together and handle it or manage it, it may affect the capacity we will have in the long run to be able to do what it is that we need to do for the kingdom. But I want to leave you with, they wasn't judged based on what it was that they received. They was judged based on what they did with what they were given. All right, John, where did he go after that?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. A lot of people say, I'll rest when I die. You may not, because depending on how you use what you had here on this time sign of life may put you into either paradise or someplace else that's not as pleasant. So look, point number 2, and this might be the last one for tonight. While I'll let Deneen finish up what she was going to say. But he says we must risk with what we have been given. And he says, what happens to the 2 servants and to the 1 servant is that you have 2 different approaches. He said, we'll either realize what God has blessed us with and we'll trade with it, or we will bury it. And he says, trade in the Greek word actually means the word for work. But here's the thing. He said that no matter which steward that you look at, all of them did work, but one work increased and another work caused them to lose what they had. And so we have to realize that whether we go ahead and use the talent and the weight that God has put on us to bring him glory or not, that it's still a work. Some of us fight so hard to not be what God has called us to be, that we're exhausted, that we are tired, that we are frustrated, and it is costing you your peace. It is costing you your fulfillment, and you're trying to figure out why life isn't working out because you're running away from what God has put on you. And if you ain't learned nothing, you can learn from Jonah. Jonah tried to run, and every place he ran to, there was trouble that followed him. Why? Because he wasn't doing what God called him to do. And he said, Brother Thomas asked us, and sometimes he said this, he's like, we have to remember, sometimes it's harder to dig a hole and bury it than to use what God has put in our hand. If you will go ahead and just teach the lesson, if you will go ahead and just sing the song, if you will go ahead and just greet the people, if you will go ahead and open the business, if you will go ahead and take care of your health, you would be better off, and it would be easier than what you're digging yourself into right now at this moment. And so stop digging. When you realize that you're in a hole, stop digging. Don't keep digging when you're in the hole. Start finding a way to get out the hole. And so he asked, why are we digging holes? And he says, sometimes it's because we're afraid, because we're paralyzed by fear. We're afraid of losing or the embarrassment of fumbling the bag, as it's called to speak. We're worried about what people will say and people calling us an imposter. But here's the thing, calling yourself, saying that you have an imposter syndrome is just a excuse to continue to procrastinate what you're being called to do. Because as long as you say that you're not the thing, then you will never become the thing. So if you can go ahead and realize that you are a human being, meaning that you are a human becoming that which God has put in your heart, you will not despise the small beginning. Yes, you may not have the experience, but that doesn't mean that you're not on the road to becoming all that God has called you to be. It is a growth process. Can you imagine if a baby would say, when they come out and they just said, I'm not going to learn to walk because I'm not a walker. Don't do that. They crawl, and then they go ahead and they learn how to pull themselves up. Before you know it, they take a step and they fall, and they're like, oops, oh, and they look at you and they say, okay, I'm going to pull myself back up. You can't just keep telling baby, oh, baby, don't get up. No, they're going to get up. Why? Because they want to walk too. And so we have to realize that there's a reason why we're not, there's a reason why we're digging holes. And sometimes it's fear, and sometimes it's because we don't trust God. We don't trust the master. But even if we don't trust God, doesn't mean, just like I said about the test, doesn't mean that we're going to have an excuse. Doesn't mean that he's going to accept the excuse, because God's going to work on the premise of what you know. And if you know, like this servant knew, he said, I knew that you was going to reap where you haven't sown. He's like, if you known that, you should have had something for me to come gather, because you already knew that I was going to ask for what you did with the money, or with the talent, or with the talent. So we got to understand that.
All right, so listen to this, y'all. Listen, here was the coup de grace for me, which is something that I have realized and that I've been working on, right? I always say this saying, it takes effort and it takes time. It takes effort and it takes time. What he was saying to, and number two, the point that he made when he said, we don't work because we don't like to do what God has called us to do because it requires work, but all things require work. I was talking with another group of individuals about all these shortcuts and time savers that we have when it comes to meal prepping or eating. What I have discovered when I'm eating faster cooking meals versus healthy meals, they all require time, right? Even when you go into the store, and here's a thing that we always talk about too, what can save you time? Because we feel like we're in control of time, which we're not. But we'll tend to get a chicken, just listen to this, a pre-cut chicken that costs us 3 times the amount of a whole chicken. When we can watch the video, we can watch a video on YouTube and just learn how to cut the chicken. It will save us money. You got to kind of figure out the value of the exchange. Yes, time is valuable and you can't get it back. Yes, it's true that you can earn more money, but remember, again, you're a steward and you don't need to just be misspending money because of convenience. Because the thing that you may feel is convenient may not be worth the sacrifice of the gift, the talent, the value. So in some instances, it's great to adopt a quicker, faster way, but in some instances, it's going to require less time, less value if you give the time instead of trying to save the time by spending more money. I hope that makes sense. So sometimes we don't want to do the work, but it all requires an effort, regardless of what it is. For you not to do what God has told you to do, to dig a hole and bury the talent, will require just as much effort as it's going to do for you to learn the skill to build and expand what it is. So this was the thing that I wanted you to walk away with it. I said I didn't want to spoil it, which we talked about here in point 2. Here's the coup de grace, the mic drop, the thing that was most powerful, my greatest takeaway that I walked away with, and hopefully you feel the same way about this too. Here's the deal. The deal is you will still be responsible for the growth that you have or you don't take or you don't make or you don't give yourself to. It's going to require something. So why not give it your 150% to go after what it is that he has called you to do, rather than be concerned about the failure, the upset, the disappointment, the shortcoming, the not making it all the way, and still have to give an account for that as well. I don't want to be or hear the words that I have not done well with the time, the gifts, the talents that God has given me, the whatever it is that he has placed in my hand. I do want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant, and I can't be afraid to use it. Here's the other rub that walked away. Everything that God has given us, he expects expansion. Put it in the chat. Everything that God has put in our hand, the expectation is expansion. So don't go to him asking for additional anything if you have not taken what you have in your hand and expanded it. Money is not meant to sit. Talent is not meant to sit. Weight is not meant to sit. It should be moving. That's why anything that sits still dies. That's why he made the reference that the harder you try to hold on to the money, the quicker it flows out your hand. It is not meant to stand still. Money is meant to move. Talents, gifts are meant to move. Everything that God put in our hand is meant to move, to expand, to grow, to transform, and to change forms. So put that in the chat. God expects expansion. And everything that he puts in my hand, I will move. If you agree with that, put it in the chat. John, I'll give you an opportunity to wrap it up. Anything that God puts in your hand, he expects you to expand. And agree that anything that he puts in your hand, you will move with it. Take action, because anything that sits still dies. And that's just the rub. That's the truth. If you put your body in a sedentary state and keep sitting and never move, your body will stop moving for you. You'll have more aches and pains. It will become stiff and you won't be able to move. It's easier for you to just go ahead and get into motion, fall down, pull yourself back up, and continue to move forward, expanding yourself, because it's uncomfortable to expand, but you was never meant to stay and remain in that same place that you were in last year. So if you see yourself in the same place that you were in last year, shame on you. And I command you to expand. All right, John, it's on you.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say, because if I say too much more, I'm going to get into the sip that we're going to have on Wednesday. So y'all tune in for the morning sip on this upcoming Wednesday, because we're going to talk about don't bury the weight. Don't bury the weight. And so there's some things that I want to say in that text to help us understand that a little bit deeper as well. But I want us to understand, like Deneen was saying, that our responsibility is to invest and to trust God. So invest what he has according to the principles that he has already taught us, because we realize, here's the thing, you realize that the master didn't give them direction. He didn't tell them anything. He gave them the talent and he left. So that means that they had to watch him already, and whatever they have already learned from him was enough to get started and to do and to be productive. So a lot of times we get in this thing of, I got to learn. No, you got to do, you got to apply. And so we got to go ahead and apply what God has already taught us, and then we'll experience that expansion, because guess what? You don't control the increase. I don't control the increase. Paul says, I watered, I planted, Apollos water, but who gave the increase? God. If you're looking for the increase, you got to go ahead and do. But here's the thing: before God gave the increase, realize what happened. They took action. One planted, another one watered. So if you want to see that increase, go ahead and put something into action and let God do what God does. All right, family, that's all I got.
All right, y'all, you can join us each and every Monday right here at the Southside Church of Christ Durham Facebook page, or on YouTube, or on John Merriweather's personal page for the Monday Message Recall, where we recap the sermon at the Southside Church of Christ located Durham, North Carolina, 800 Elmira Avenue. You can join us there at 9:30 a.m. followed by Bible study. Midweek Bible study is on Wednesday starting at 7 o'clock p.m. Join to Southside Everywhere. I put it inside the chat. That's where you can get the morning sip. You can have prayer night with us on Tuesday. You also will get It's a Bar by Crystal Taylor. She's doing a new feature inside of that community. So make sure you join Southside Everywhere. If you ain't a member yet, what are you waiting on? It's an opportunity for you to stay connected to John and I throughout the week, so you can ask your questions. And definitely it's an atmosphere for people who want to connect with God. So we're connecting the seeker, healing the wounded, securing the saved, healing people from church hurts and conversations that they may not feel comfortable having in a church environment, a regular traditional church environment. You're welcome to come into this community, ask your questions, join us in some private groups and chats. We'll be more than happy to have these conversations with you and repair that relationship that you have with your church body, the church family, or come and join us at the Southside Church of Christ, because that's what we want anyway. But we love you. We're here to serve you, and we'll see you next week for the Monday Message Recall on Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. Have a good night. Time to eat.